Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are looking at something just truly extraordinary. It's a nearly 20,000 word document written from a prison cell.
It's titled The Prison Defense and Blood Letter of Accusation.
And it was written by Dr. Chen Jing Yuan, who has a PhD in physics. He's an independent scholar.
Right. And he was convicted of a charge you see pretty often in these contexts, picking quarrels and provoking trouble, basically for forwarding posts on social media, on Twitter.
So our mission today is to really unpack why this document is seen as so much more than just a legal appeal. It's being analyzed as this major historical and philosophical text.
It's this incredibly structured intellectual counterattack. And we're going to focus on the logic of it, the structure of his defense, because it really tries to just completely transcend the court's whole framing of the case.
Okay, so to get why his defense is so radical, we first have to understand the official story, right? The court's version of events.
Exactly. So according to the official documents, Dr. Chen, born in '76, a scientist, he was convicted for activity between 2019 and 2022. The court said he used overseas tools Twitter to spread false information.
And that this false information then disturbed social order. He got a sentence of 1 year and 8 months.
But here's the critical part, the justification. The court's ruling explicitly said that because of his high level of education and knowledge, he should have known the content was false.
Wow, so his education became the proof of his bad intent.
It's a complete inversion.
Yep.
His intellect was used against him, and the process itself was very quick. He appealed, but the higher court just dismissed it. No open hearing.
And why? What was the reason?
The reason given was that he did not submit new evidence. As far as the system was concerned, the case was closed.
Okay, so that's the official narrative. Now let's pivot to who Dr. Chen says he is in this blood letter.
It's a totally different picture. He portrays himself as an independent scholar, a specialist in nonlinear complex systems theory. Someone whose life is dedicated to the freedom and independence of the spirit.
And learning is the essence of life for him.
And right away, the text itself rejects being called just a defense document. The analysis calls it a composite document. It's part legal appeal, part political declaration, part philosophical treatise.
And part scientific paper. It's all of those things at once. A piece of prison literature.
It's even compared to these huge historical works. Think Guiyuan's Li Sao, that sense of personal and civilizational suffering.
And Socrates' Apology, that unbending, logical defiance. He was clearly aiming for this to echo through history, far beyond that courtroom.
Which leads us straight into his strategy. The sources summarize it so well. Do not fight the lawsuit within their logic, but drag them into my knowledge system to subvert it.
That phrase, a dimensionality reduction attack, it sounds like something out of science fiction, but what does it actually mean in a legal fight?
It means he refuses to play their game on their level, right? He won't argue about the small dimension of a single tweet. Instead, he forces the entire debate onto a much higher, much more complex intellectual dimension.
So he's elevating the stakes so high that the court's own logic starts to look, well, simple.
Yeah.
Or even incompetent to judge him.
Exactly. He turns a case about picking quarrels into a conflict of civilizations.
How does he do that?
Two main ways. First, he reframes it from an individual case to a civilizational conflict. He's constantly talking about civilization versus barbarism or science versus anti-science. He paints the court and the police not as neutral arbiters, but as an anti-civilizational force.
And the second way is where the PhD really comes out to play, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He shifts from criminal law language to scientific and philosophical language. He just floods the text with high-level concepts.
Like what?
Complex systems dynamics, Gödel's incompleteness theorem. He's referencing political philosophers like Rawls and Nozick.
The goal being to create a state of, what did the analysis call it? Non-justiciability.
Yes. The subtext is, your understanding of the world is so limited, you are not even qualified to judge me. It's an intellectual shield.
But it's not just posturing. He goes on the attack. The letter isn't just a defense, it's an accusation.
That's right. He moves from defense to offense. He formally accuses them of torture and coercion to get a confession.
Yeah, all right.
He accuses them of major procedural violations, like starting the case with zero evidence and just assuming his guilt from the start. He even calls the bodies involved a judicial mafia.
That is incredibly strong language.
And it had real consequences.
Oh.
The sources say that because his defense contained these accusations, it became a blocked legal assistance document. The prison allegedly refused to even pass his accusations on.
So the system itself blocked his attempt to report misconduct within the system.
which of course just reinforces his entire narrative.
Okay, let's drill down now into the core logical assault. He had to rebut 3 specific legal elements of the pick and quarrels charge.
Yes, and he used a different academic discipline for each one. It's brilliant. First up, the objective result, causing serious public disorder.
How on earth does a physicist argue that a few tweets can't cause public disorder?
He treats Twitter like a complex system, which it is. He brings in specific scientific models, like self-organized criticality, or SOC.
Okay, you're going to have to break that one down.
In simple terms, SOC says that in a complex system, big changes, like a snowball effect of chaos, usually only happen when the system is already at a tipping point, a critical point. His account, with fewer than 100 followers and fewer than 100 forwards, was what he called a weak micronode.
A tiny little speck in the network.
Precisely. And his scientific argument is that a single micronode cannot, by definition, cause a system-wide phase change into chaos. If chaos happened, it's because the whole network was already unstable.
So he's saying, don't blame me, blame the inherent instability of the system.
Or at least, you haven't proven the burden of causation. He even points out the irony that the posts he forwarded are reportedly still online. If they were so dangerous, why are they still there?
That's a pretty airtight argument from a scientific perspective. Okay, next element. Rebutting false information. The court said he spread rumors.
For this, he switches from physics to philosophy. He leans really heavily on Karl Popper's idea of falsifiability.
So he starts by categorizing the posts he shared.
Right. He splits them into 4 types: art and emotion, subjective sentiment, academic debate, and then finally, objective description.
And his argument is that most of these can't even be called false.
Exactly. He argues the first 3 categories, art, emotion, and opinion, are fundamentally non-falsifiable. How do you legally prove that a poem is false, or that someone's subjective feeling is wrong?
You can't. It's not a scientific claim.
And that's his point. By treating art or an academic viewpoint as a criminal rumor, he argues the court shows it doesn't even understand the basic difference between a fact and a viewpoint. The accusation is philosophically illiterate.
Which is a devastating critique. So that leaves the last piece, the mens rea, the subjective intent, rebutting that he was knowing.
And this is where the court thought they had him, using his high education against him. They said, a man this smart must have known it was false.
And how does he flip that?
This might be the most brilliant part. He uses epistemology. He takes their premise, that he's a highly educated scholar, and uses it to prove the opposite. He brings up Gödel's incompleteness theorem.
Okay, Gödel's theorem. Explain that one for us.
Well, very simplified. Gödel proved that in any complex formal system, like mathematics, there will always be statements that are true but can't be proven true from within that system.
So no system can contain all truths about itself.
Exactly. And Dr. Chen applies that to politics and knowledge. He says, as a true scholar, his duty is to be skeptical of all claims, especially claims of absolute truth from any system. He references Socrates, Plato's cave, the idea that a wise person knows that they don't know.
So his high education doesn't mean he knows things are false.
It means he knows that absolute certainty is impossible. So for him to meet the court's standard of knowing something is absolutely false is, for a true scientist, a logical impossibility. He completely reverses their logic.
That is just a masterclass in intellectual self-defense. Let's shift gears a bit to the rhetoric, the emotional side of this. It's called a martyr's text.
It is. It's full of pathos and ethos. The ethos, the credibility, comes from that identity he builds. Scientist, victim, resistor. It gives him the moral high ground.
But the pathos, the emotion, it's called a blood letter for a reason.
Absolutely. The language is raw. It describes suffering, intense anger at the authorities, and this deep, passionate plea for civilization and reason.
What's so powerful, though, is how that raw emotion sits right next to the extreme logical rigor we just talked about.
That's the unique combination. High emotional tension plus dense academic logical argument. It's very rare, and it's what makes it so powerful as a piece of prison literature.
And beyond his own case, the analysis says this text works as an era's mirror. What does it reflect about the bigger picture?
Well, 2 main things. First, for legal history. It's this incredibly detailed case study of how the pick and quarrel charge gets used. It shows what's called selective enforcement. He gets prosecuted. But the people who originally wrote the posts, or others who shared them, don't.
And the second thing?
For cultural and political history, it captures this timeless conflict between the intellectual conscience, the traditional Chinese idea of the scholar official and the power of the state. It's seen as a vital primary source for understanding that relationship today.
And he never backs down, does he? Even after the fact.
Never. The sources mention his follow-up statements, where he clarifies that any time he admitted to flaws in his appeal, it was just scholarly humility, not an admission of guilt. He states it flatly. I have never confessed to the so-called crime.
So the document wasn't really about winning his freedom in their system. It was about creating a record for history.
I think that's exactly right. The blood letter is a challenge to the very idea of the rule of law as it was being applied to him. It uses the highest intellectual tools, from quantum theory to political philosophy, as weapons of defense. It's meant to be the height of rational dignity against what he saw as irrational force.
And that really leaves us with a final, very provocative thought for you, the listener. Dr. Chen's document forces us to ask this fundamental question. How far is a society from its own stated commitment to the rule of law when one of its most educated citizens feels he has to write in his own blood just to prove his innocence to the system itself?
The source suggests that ACT, that letter, is meant to be a permanent scratch mark on collective memory.
A record of what it can cost to demand intellectual freedom. We hope this deep dive gave you a clear look at this incredible document.
Thank you for diving in with us.
We'll see you next time.